So again, Austin Perez, National Association of Realtors. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Association of State Floodplain Managers. You all are really important, how you help home buyers and owners learn about flood risk. A couple of things. I get a lot of questions from floodplain managers about realtors, so I thought I would take a few minutes, talk a little bit about, what is a realtor, what do they do, to try to help you have some insight as you interact with my members, what's more likely to go over well versus less well. The first thing is, as you know, a home purchase is probably the largest purchase of a homeowner's, home buyer's life. So it's a significantly highly charged emotional kind of issue. Secondly, it's a very complex process. You have many players at the table who each have to do their job seamlessly and adequately and pass the baton to the next person every stage throughout the process in order to complete a transaction in roughly a 45-day period. What this means for realtors, why does a buyer hire a realtor? Well, they know that this potentially could go bad, being such a large asset in mind. So they hire a realtor to help them navigate, negotiate the process, to determine when they need to go to who at what point in the process. They also they identify the landmines. You need to disclose this at this point in the process, et cetera. They're like a train conductor. That was sort of the best analogy. They keep the trains moving. And so they want to make sure that at every stage in the process is operating seamlessly. Something I do want to emphasize, they are not risk communicators. A lot of people look at realtors as if they're going to be able to explain flood risk. I'm not even sure I understand what it means to have a 26% chance of flooding over 30 years. I don't know if I understand that probability. I'm a pretty smart guy. I spend a lot of time studying this issue. My members are not going to be able to communicate flood risk. And so relying on them or asking them to take on that burden is going to be a challenge that they're going to push back on. The kinds of opportunities that, and by the way, flood insurance is probably the potential largest landmine in the process. For most people, it comes closer to the end of the process when the buyer finally focuses and gets the notice from the lender, we will not close on your loan unless you buy flood insurance. I mean, that's at the point 10, 12 days before the closing table where most of them are focused. I mean, some of them do have the ability to assume a policy. It's not every case, but from my members' perspective, they look at flood insurance as an additional complexity that comes at the end of the process. And if something goes wrong, and every one of my members have a horror story where some unique piece of information came up close to the end of the home buying process, and it blew up the transaction. So for them, flood insurance, it looks a lot like that for most of them. I mean, some of my members are doing a lot of transactions. They've been through the process multiple times. It's not so much of an issue. They've got it down. They figured it out. But most of my members, the typical NAR member makes about $40,000 per year, and they do maybe 2 or 3 sales. So we're not talking about the largest brokers who are doing, dozens of transactions or have members who are doing dozens of transactions. I mean, most of my members have a second job. This is not their focus. This is something they'd like to do to build on to get further ahead. But this is going to be a particular challenge for them, especially when such a small area is in the floodplain. So chances are most of my members will never transact business in the floodplain. And so where the challenges come up is when my members come across a property that's in the floodplain and they've never had to go through that process before. That's something you all can help them with. So proposals that they're likely to question, anything that adds complexity or time to the transaction process. For instance, a flood map appeal would add time to a process, which, by the way, if you're dealing with a mortgage loan, there is a time lock when you have to complete the transaction in order to maintain the interest rate on the mortgage. And so if you have some issue and you want to appeal the map and it extends beyond that rate lock, then you're looking at a higher interest rate. Proposals that are likely to embrace anything that gives them credible third-party information. FEMA's flood maps, insurance rates after rate 2.0, anything that allows them to say to a buyer who has a question about flood insurance, go here, this person has this information which would help the buyer make an informed decision. Secondly, anything that would help them build an Angie's List. My members have an Angie's List for everything from plumbers to inspectors to if they had a short list of flood specialists in their community, which should start with you as the floodplain manager. It's alarming to me that when I get a question from a member, what do I do? And I say, well, there's a floodplain manager, and they say, who's that? Get to know your realtor, talk to your realtor association, make yourself known, and I would be happy to facilitate those contacts, but we really need to get you on the short list of people that my members need to be turning to in a transaction. So in terms of flood insurance, just a quick update on that. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiations going on right now in the House. The House is likely to go first with a proposal. I'm encouraged by some of the early discussions between Democrats and Republicans on reform and reauthorization longer term. That means there's going to be the need for another extension. As Chad mentioned, May 31st is the deadline. I know that the House has already passed sort of the same extension to September 30th twice to give Senate options. The Senate right now is trying to figure out whether it wants to move it as part of a larger disaster relief bill or whether they want to move it on a standalone basis. The challenge in the Senate is that some people just want to extend the program as it is. Others don't want to let it be extended unless it's reformed. And so there's some healthy discussions going on which will continue over the next couple of months. So right now, as of Wednesday, a couple of days before May 31st, I think we will know more later today what the chances are if there is sort of this extension is going to pass before May 31 or if it's going to be a few days after, but we should know that pretty soon. I wouldn't want to handicap exactly what that process looks like. I think at the end of the day, they will be able to extend it easily to September 30th because of the reform discussions in the House. But I wanted to at least flag that, give you sort of a up-to-the-moment sort of update on flood insurance.